I saw Get Out, and I thought, this seems like a really interesting composer. I wonder if he's written anything for band and orchestra. I was director of bands at Butler University at the time. So I reached out via Facebook, of all things, found that we had some mutual friends and sent him a message on Facebook and said, hey, have you ever thought about composing anything for band? And he wrote back almost immediately and said, I think this sounds really intriguing. Let's talk. And next thing I knew, he had written a work for the Butler Wind Ensemble and the Butler Ballet.
From NCPR, welcome to Northwards. People, ideas, and conversations from and about Northern New York, Vermont, and beyond. I'm Mitch Teich.
Support for the Northwards podcast comes from the J.C. Steiniger and M.E. McDonald Charitable Fund at Adirondack Foundation, in support of the Adirondack Foundation, building stronger Adirondack communities.
It's funny. So this tells you what a nerdy family I have. It's we for a long time played fantasy sports, right? Like fantasy baseball.
I'm familiar. Even though I don't do it myself.
For a long time, and it could probably happen again this year. My family did fantasy Tour de France.
Go on.
And part of the fun of playing fantasy sports is dreaming up the lunatic names for your team. And my wife, actually, this was her cycling team name. It helps to know what a chicane is. You know what a chicane is? It's like
I don't.
It's like a part of a race course or a road that makes a quick turn and then a quick turn back.
Okay.
In places where there's a lot of traffic, sometimes they put a chicane in as a traffic calming device.
Right.
And there are often chicanes in a cycling race.
I feel like I've seen many chicanes in James Bond films.
Probably
to make it more daring.
Right. So, so my wife's cycling team name was Chicane Djibouti.
I like that. Are you familiar with Tour de Franzia? Do you know what that is? Can you guess what that is?
It's you ride your bike and drink a lot of cheap wine.
I think riding your bike is technically illegal if you're drinking wine. Isn't that drinking and driving? It's where you and
some kind of progressive party.
Pretty much, yeah. You just team up with a couple of people and you can see which group can finish a box of wine the first. And it's a really bad idea. I only did it one time. My friends told me it'd be great. It was not great.
When I was in college in the 1920s, my senior year, I dated a woman, and it was we were definitely. I guess we still are Gen X kids, but this was the early '90s, and there was a lot of white Zinfandel drinking and I think I still have a headache from it.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, I think we chose a sweet red wine, and that did not help our case at all. But this provides like a nice segue, because the person that I was doing the Tour de Franzia with, I had just started dating not too long before that. And it was like one of the first big parties we had at the new house that we all lived in. Me and a bunch of friends moved into a literal mansion in Madrid. It had like secret passageways and stuff. And it was gigantic, big, scary basement. Used to be a funeral home, apparently. We did Tour de France in there, and we're still together to this day. And she was going to grad school at the time, or she was about to go to grad school. So we would get together on the weekends, basically a couple weekends a month. And one of those weekends was in October. And she had never seen The Shining before. My house was really scary. Like I just said that it used to be a funeral home. It was the kind of place where you'd hear loud footsteps when no one was home. And I don't necessarily believe in ghosts or hauntings, but...
And when you drank, did you say, let's get embalmed?
Damn it, I should have. But, so there'd be like loud clangings, and you'd hear like scratching in the walls, which is obviously mice. But when, you have an overactive imagination, it's ghosts in the walls. And I thought it would be a good idea to show her The Shining. which is a terrifying film. You've seen The Shining.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay. So you know how scary it is, even though it's what, 50 years old now, almost 50 years old.
At least, yeah.
Yeah, 1980. So
So
yeah,
not 50 years old.
almost
so
50.
Like 45.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost 50. I was right.
Rounded up to the closest 50.
You rounded up to the closest 50. And so, Erin had never seen it before. And so we have this gigantic living room, and off to the side, there's this big library with a fireplace in it, and with just this giant flat screen TV. I think we had a big stereo setup to it as well. So put on The Shining and cranked it as loud as it can go. And then I promptly fell asleep because at the time... At the time, I was working a radio job where I was up at 4:30, 5
All
o'clock.
work and no play makes Ethan a sleepy boy.
Exactly, it does. And what does Homer Simpson say? No beer, no TV, make Homer something. And Marge says, go crazy. And Homer says, don't mind if I do. Chases her around Anyway. So I promptly fell asleep, like maybe 15 minutes in. They barely got into the hotel, right? They barely started doing the caretaker stuff, and nothing really scary happens yet. But then Erin is just alone in my big creepy house watching The Shining, and
While you're snoring
while
next
I'm
to her.
snoring. And there's this moment where, I mean, the music in that movie is just like so intense and just like digs its fingers into you. But there's a moment where it stops. I think probably in that moment right before the blood starts coming out of the elevator. And
Spoiler alert.
for a 50-year-old movie. And she's sitting there watching this movie, terrified. And all of a sudden, the pipes in our basement start clanging and banging on their own as the heating system comes back on. And she basically her heart just jumps into her throat. And I had to hear about it all the next day because I kind of bailed on her while she's experiencing this terrifying thing for the first time in our arguably haunted house. And I've tried to be much better about that in the intervening years, not leaving my girlfriend hanging while watching this terrifying movie. But
you mentioned the soundtrack there.
Yeah, she's a good sport. The soundtrack, again, it's not something that I'm going to listen to on my own because I don't want to walk around with goosebumps and freaked out all day. But if you just press mute on the movie, it's suddenly not scary anymore because the images that you're watching are really impactful and they might even be gory and violent and stuff. But it's the soundtrack that really cues your body and tells you what to feel and when. Soundtracks are this really incredible thing.
Case in point.
Yeah.
There's a soundtrack from a movie that I have never seen.
Oh.
That I grew up listening to, and to this day gives me goosebumps.
What is it?
It's giving me goosebumps thinking about it. It's the soundtrack from The Exorcist, which is Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells. Yeah.
You've never seen The Exorcist?
Never seen The Exorcist.
Oh my God. But you know that it's from... So wait, the thought of the movie in conjunction with the music freaks you out?
No, I think it's just, it doesn't freak me out.
Oh.
I think it's music
just so affecting?
is so, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
That's exactly it. And, there are only a handful of records I remember consciously saying, I need to go listen to this in the headphones. And, and I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, and the headphones were on this. I say this, and you're wearing headphones that are attached with a cord to the mixing board. But, we had a stereo in our living room, big wooden stereo.
Yeah.
And the headphones were like these big, helicopter-sized,
gigantic cans,
clamps on your ears with the curly cord, as though you were on a telephone or something like that. And so you really had to you had to be on the couch in the spot closest to the stereo for the headphones to even reach.
It was like an intentional listening experience.
That's exactly what it was. And I remember doing this when I was 7 or 8 years old and thinking, wow, this music is really creepy and really amazing too, because it really is a record that is best appreciated in the headphones. But again,
and in totality, it's something that you should listen to from start to finish. It's really spectacular.
Very effective soundtrack. And the reason we're talking about this right now is that the guy we're going to hear from on today's Northwards is not a movie star himself or a movie producer. He is the conductor and music director of the Orchestra of Northern New York. His name is Michael Colbrun. We spoke with him actually about a year ago when he took the job.
Right.
He's only the second conductor in the orchestra's history. But the concert that we talked with him ahead of, that sentence almost made sense,
It's fine. They get it.
includes some what you would think of as traditional classical music, some Beethoven, some Mozart, some Mendelssohn, and also music by a composer named Michael Abels, who is probably best known, as Michael Colbrun will talk about, for his work with the film director Jordan Peele.
Who does exclusively horror movies.
Right.
Yeah.
And as you'll hear Michael Colbrun talk about, he was first attracted to Abel's music because he heard it at a movie he
Right.
went to. And the piece that they're going to perform in this concert is not from a movie, but it's just a really interesting conversation with Michael Colbrun about not just the concert itself, but how a conductor and a music director connects with kind of new music.
Yeah, and a really interesting way that he got connected with this film composer and convinced him to come write this thing for the orchestra. So, yeah, you want to introduce him?
Let's welcome him to the Northward studio right now. Michael Colbrun, thanks so much.
Thanks, Mitch. It's great to be back.
Before we talk about the program coming up, I wanted to kind of get a status report, if you will. The last we talked, you were just in the process of taking over as the orchestra's second ever music director and conductor. How do you feel like you've adapted to the role?
Well, I'm having a great time, first and foremost. Really enjoying working with these musicians. Looking forward to preparing another concert with them this coming week. And it's been a great transition so far. I've gotten wonderful support from the administration of the orchestra. We've had a bit of turnover in personnel. John Lindsay, our longtime concertmaster, retired at the end of last season. And Liesl Doty, who will be a soloist on this program, is our new concertmaster. She's not fully stepped into that role yet, but we're very excited about that.
Well, and along those lines, for people who maybe, you know, their experience with an orchestra is just seeing the orchestra in concert, they might know the term concertmaster. They might even recognize who the concertmaster is on the stage. But what does a concertmaster really do, and how does the concertmaster work with the conductor?
Sure. Well, every orchestra has a number of what we call principal musicians, basically the top musician for each section, who plays the first part and handles solos when they come along. The most important of those positions is the principal violin, the concertmaster. And to use a military analogy, they're kind of like second in command musically. And so it's really important that the conductor and the concertmaster have a good relationship. Liesl is a fantastic musician. I haven't had a chance to work with her in that capacity yet, but just in the rehearsing that we've done and the collaborations that we've already experienced, I think we're going to have a wonderful relationship as well.
Well, yeah, so take us behind the scenes. How does the concertmaster differ in what she or he does? People probably recognize that it's typically the concertmaster who comes on stage and helps the orchestra tune, for example. But what else do they do?
Yes, so that is how you know who the concertmaster is. It's kind of a ceremonial duty, but they're always sitting right to the left of the conductor. And they really have so much musical responsibility, not only for the string section. I mean, they're kind of the lead principal for the entire string section, but also for the orchestra. So if there's ever a question about what players need to be doing musically, they're often going to look to that concertmaster. And especially in orchestras where they have different conductors, especially guest conductors, the concertmaster tends to be the constant, right? And so they are the person, again, who a lot of the musicians kind of look to and listen to for musical leadership.
In some ways, do they have to have some conducting chops, if you will?
Not necessarily. They have to be musical leaders, but that's not necessarily the same as having to wield a baton, right? But you'll see, in fact, many orchestras, depending on the repertoire, work without conductors completely. And so they look to the concertmaster and, again, listen to the concertmaster for that kind of leadership that a conductor would otherwise provide.
Does an orchestra have to adapt to a new conductor, or does a conductor adapt to his his new orchestra, or is it a little of both? And how has that process played out in this almost a year that you've been in this role?
It is definitely a bit of both, and dependent very much on personalities and leadership style. I am a conductor who works with a wide variety of ensembles, ranging from student ensembles to amateur to professional, both band and orchestra. And there are slight differences between all of those types of ensembles. And so whenever I'm working with a group for the first time, within just the first couple of minutes, I kind of establish a baseline for, okay, so this is how this group operates. And they, conversely, are also getting a read on me. And so what I always tell my conducting students is it's very much a two-way street. You don't want to just be sending information out as the conductor. You also need to be receiving information, basically the music that you're hearing, and figuring out how you need to adjust your gestures to get the music to sound the way you want it to sound. So with some orchestras, especially European orchestras, they often play with a pretty substantial delay. It can be a little disconcerting when you see one of those orchestras for the first time and you watch the gestures from the conductor and see how late the response from the musicians is. I'm not a big fan of that kind of delay, and more American orchestras these days especially are moving away from that and really playing much more in sync with what they're seeing from the conductor.
That's really interesting. I, as someone who's never conducted an orchestra, it didn't dawn on me that there would be any way of doing it besides the immediacy of seeing a gesture and wanting to follow it at that moment.
It very much is cause and effect, for those people who love classical music and may enjoy, conducting along to their favorite recording, they may think they're causing that music to happen, but they're not. They're just kind of following someone else's interpretation. But when you're making music with live musicians, you are gauging what you're doing based on what you're hearing. And again, making those adjustments so that the tempo, the entrances, the style, all those things that are so important are happening the way you want them to.
Maybe this is a better question for one of the musicians in the orchestra whose career has spanned multiple conductors. But do you feel like there are some things that are being done differently now at the Orchestra of Northern New York after so many years with a single conductor? Yeah,
I don't really know much about Ken Andrews other than having a ton of respect for him for founding this orchestra and growing it and maintaining it for so many years. So really, they could probably give you a better answer to that question. But I am trying to put my own kind of imprint on the organization, especially through programming. And so longtime fans of the Orchestra of Northern New York may have noticed a slight change in programming, moving away from the more traditional Masterworks program where we programmed exclusively classical repertoire to a little bit more of a hybrid style of programming. So you'll still hear those great masterworks, but like in this concert, you're going to hear works by Mozart, Mendelssohn, and Beethoven, but you're also going to hear work by the contemporary African-American composer Michael Abels. And it's a work that is infused with gospel and bluegrass, blues, and all sorts of different kind of vernacular jazz and folk styles. So I find that kind of programming really interesting as a listener and as a conductor. So I'm hoping our audiences will feel the same way.
People obviously recognize Mozart and Beethoven and Mendelssohn, but tell us more about Abels and what he's known for.
So Michael Abels is a composer based in L.A., and he is perhaps best known for his collaborations with the director Jordan Peele. Movies like Get Out, Us, and Nope, these really interesting horror movies that Peele has created that are incredibly innovative and imaginative. And he is a big fan of film music and really searched far and wide before he settled on Michael Abels as the right musician for his films. And the two have worked very closely together. I don't know how many of your listeners have watched those films, but I recommend them not only because they're fun movies to watch, but the way the music is such a critical part of the presentation. So that's how I first found out about Michael Abels. I saw Get Out, and I thought, this seems like a really interesting composer. I wonder if he's written anything for band and orchestra. I was director of bands at Butler University at the time. So I reached out via Facebook, of all things, found that we had some mutual friends and sent him a message on Facebook and said, hey, have you ever thought about composing anything for band? And he wrote back almost immediately and said, I think this sounds really intriguing. Let's talk. And next thing I knew, he had written a work for the Butler Wind Ensemble and the Butler Ballet. It's actually a 20-minute ballet for dance and wind band accompaniment, which is very unusual in the dance world. Almost all ballets are written for orchestra. And so he was intrigued about the idea of writing for, winds, brass, and percussion and putting them in the pit of our wonderful Butler Ballet. And so that's how I got to know Michael on a very personal level. And then when I was setting up this program, and I'd already settled on the Beethoven, and thought, I think I'd like to create kind of a dance theme in this program, I thought of this work that I'd heard many years earlier called Delights and Dances, which is infused, as I said, with these very interesting kind of popular musical styles.
Huh. And this was not one that he had composed specifically for an ensemble that you were conducting at the time.
Right. Yeah. It had nothing to do with my work with Michael, and actually predated his film work by about 10 years or so. Much earlier in his career.
It's interesting to think of you going to a movie and taking not just the plot and the acting and the directing as something that you're interested in, but listening to the soundtrack with an ear towards how it might impact what you do.
Well, yes. I mean, I always am listening very carefully to the music, sometimes to the point of distraction. I have to go back and watch the movie again because I was so distracted by the music. But I am especially always interested in innovative scores and the innovative use of music. And as someone who's been responsible for a number of commissions, primarily for concert band, but also for orchestra, I'm often looking for composers who have not yet written for those ensembles, looking for fresh voices, new ideas that can really help to kind of, change and expand our classical music world. And that was very much the case with Michael.
This piece, Delights and Dances, also features a number of solos, is that right?
That's right. So I think I mentioned earlier that Liesl Doty is our new concertmaster. Not fully in that role yet, but will be as of next season. And we have a number of other principals from ONNY, Marie-Elaine Gagnon, who's our principal cello, Shelley Tramposh, who is the newly appointed viola principal, and Tim Yip, who is not a principal in the orchestra but also plays with ONNY. So once I had kind of settled on this piece, I reached out to Liesl and asked if she knew of other players who might be interested in this kind of work and would have the kind of skill set to play music like this that was influenced by classical music, but also by bluegrass and folk music and blues and gospel and all that. And she told me that she has an ensemble with Shelley and Marie-Elaine, and they do occasionally collaborate with Tim as well, focusing on a lot of this kind of music. So it was really serendipity. When I found out that not only did they have this skill set, but they were really intrigued by this particular work. And then once I knew that there was that ONNY connection as well, it just seemed like it was predestined.
The other aspect of this program, is that the winner of the Young Artist Competition is performing as part of the Mendelssohn piece.
That's right. Yeah. So we're going to have a number of soloists on this program. Eric Lee is the winner of our Young Artist Concerto Competition, and he'll be playing the first movement of the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto, one of the best-known violin concertos in the repertoire. And he is a supremely talented young man. Really looking forward to working with him on this concert and showing our audience just how much talent he has.
Anything we should know about the Mozart and the Beethoven that are part of this? Very spring-like?
Well, the Mozart overture is one of his opera overtures, Così fan tutti. Very charming, brief work, but so representative of how he mastered that classical overture form. And then really the biggest piece of real estate on the program is the Beethoven Symphony No. 7, a work that is very much inspired by dance. In fact, the very famous German composer Richard Wagner called this work the apotheosis of the dance because he really felt like it really just represented the joy and energy of dance music. And so that will be the second half of the program. And yes, it will be, again, obviously revealing the influence of dance, but there's something about it, too, that just seems perfect to usher in spring.
And do you feel like when you're conducting a piece that is inspired by dance, do your gestures change? Do you feel like you're dancing along with the orchestra?
They certainly can. I don't have as many dance moves as some conductors out there, perhaps because of being in a uniform for so many years. But I will admit that music that's influenced by dance does definitely affect my gestures on the podium.
Well, Michael Colbrun, thank you so much, and best of luck with this program, and let's talk again soon.
Great. Thank you so much, Mitch.
Michael Colbrun is the music director and conductor of the Orchestra of Northern New York. The orchestra plays its spring concert featuring the music that you heard Michael Colbrun talk about on Saturday the 25th in Potsdam and Sunday the 26th in Watertown. You can find more details at ncpr.org/northwards.
I really loved hearing about how Michael connected with the composer of the score for Get Out. And I know for a fact that you've never seen that movie, which is a disgrace. What's wrong with you?
You know what? I will tell you what I tell everybody when they ask me why I haven't seen the scary movie called X or read the scary book called Y.
Because it's not on Hallmark.
No, because I find real life scary enough. Thank you very much.
Oh, geez. Are you an anxious person?
I am an anxious person on the inside. I try to be pretty not anxious on the outside. But yeah, I mean, I grew up as a very anxious kid.
Yeah, me too. Outwardly, you seem like a person who's on a pretty even keel, which is why I asked that. So I learned a long time ago that one of the reasons that I really like horror movies is because I'm very anxious, and I always have been. And scary movies and scary books give me like a place to put that anxiety, like temporarily, because, so often anxiety comes from nowhere. It's not from external stimuli. It's just your brain. And I find that when I watch horror movies, I'm actually not, even though like sometimes I'm scared, there's a few movies that I never want to watch again because they freak me out too bad. But for the most part, it calms me down for like an hour and a half or 2 hours, because now that I'm feeling like kind of anxious, there's a thing in front of me that's causing that. So it's not just like this nebulous, like free-floating ball of fear that I constantly live with every second of every day. Now there's something that I can respond to and like put my anxiety into for like a little while. It's nice. It's pretty relaxing, actually. I always feel better after watching Jason Voorhees kill a bunch of people, It's good.
Yeah, but after the movie ends, you still have to remember that you're going to die someday.
Yeah, hopefully not at the end of a machete. Thanks, Mitch.
Ethan, with that existential angst taking us out, tell us who puts this show together.
Northwards is an NCPR podcast production. The show is written, produced, and edited by Mitch Tyke with digital production supervision by me. I'm Ethan Shanty. To find more conversations and to support this show, visit ncpr.org/northwards. This is NCPR, North Country Public Radio.